Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me. Thanks for the Female Founders team of inviting me here and giving me the opportunity to speak about something I'm passionate about, which is healthcare, and especially the computational healthcare part, which I'm thinking going to be the future of healthcare. And they also give me the opportunity to do this with 4 amazing people who actually have the expertise, did healthcare investing themselves, and actually went through the pain of fundraising. So I would like to welcome with me, first of all, Stephanie, who's the founder of OcuHealth, a digital ocular biomarker company from Bristol. Second, I have Jenny with me, and she's the founder of April, a company in the area of reproduction tech. And third, I'm sure most of the people know the local champion here as Hansi Hansmann, a serial entrepreneur and angel investor in healthcare. Hi, Hansi. And the last person I'm excited about is René. He's part of the board of Unica Insurances here in Austria. Well, I would like you to kind of think about this. Health tech is actually the fastest growing vertical in Europe currently. And I would like to start about asking you first, what do you think is the driver currently in the digital health area? And what do you think that this vertical is kind of booming currently? And I think this question goes to the both founders actually who have been through the funding period recently. So what do you think is the biggest driver in digital healthcare?
Okay, well, I'm in no mean AVC, but like I have like some personal thoughts on this, and I think, there's some underlying macroeconomic trends, I think, and personally, what we see, and it's also for my company, I think it's the aging population, like the lifespan of like our society, which is cool in a way. It means like we're all getting older, but it also means that we all have a bit more diseases in the end, like chronic diseases. For us as a company, it means like, also the lifestyle choices change. It means people get children later. Infertility is a problem. I think this is one driver. The other one I see is like definitely the, advancements in technology, telemedicine, mobile diagnostics capabilities. And I think it's also the fact that, there are always like advancements in technology, but there's also like we as people, we also are willing to use them more. Like for me, it drives me crazy when I go to the doctor and I still have to fill out a piece of paper. It's like, it drives me nuts. So I think this is like also a trend that we see. And I think the third one, this is more like a personal one for me, is that it's also the right thing to do. It's just like we all have limited resources, and we have to think about like where we spend our time and energy and money on. And I think healthcare, similar to like sustainability and climate change, is one of the most crucial things we have. And I think that's why I hope that also VCs see this a bit more importantly. Yeah.
Well, you most probably are kind of curious what Jenny's actually doing with her startup. Jenny, do you want to say 3 lines about April actually?
Yeah, sure. So April is a fertility benefits company, and I think most of you have probably not heard of that before, but fertility benefits means that the employer is actually supporting their employees with things like egg freezing or sperm freezing, but also IVF, adoption or surrogacy, at least in those countries where it's allowed. And the idea is that you as an employer say, hey, I want you to have kids. I don't care when, how, and with whom, but I support you on that journey. And I think this is a super cool thing to do. And I think especially now in today's war for talent, a very unique thing to offer as an employer.
Cool. One thing I researched, Hansi, was it's around 10 years ago you invested in MySugar, almost to the date. Like compared to 10 years, do you see actually the same excitement in the healthcare sector as you've seen 10 years ago? Or how different is it actually?
That's a funny question, because it's a clear no, it's not the same excitement today, because 10 years ago, in fact, there was no excitement at all about health tech. I think even health tech didn't exist, the word. When I invested in MySugar, for the first 2 years I was financing the company alone because it was practically impossible to find somebody to do the next funding. Why has that changed, or why is this? I think health tech is one of the slowest industries to digitalize because they are very big stakeholders. And the bigger the stakeholders, the slower they move. And the biggest stakeholders in health tech, I mean, it's public health, it's the pharmaceutical industry, it's the doctors or the associations of doctors, it's the insurance companies, and all of them are slow. And we know that insurance companies are slow movers, but among them, they have been the fastest, I would say, among what I was explaining now. And that has changed now, totally changed. We are still not there where I think we should be, because public health has not really moved now, and public health will be the big stakeholder which will change everything. But there are several years to come until we will see that. I remember that when I invested in My Sugar, 3 passionate founders, they were excited. Yes, the excitement was among some founders. They were excited, they were passionate, and they were suffering type 1 diabetes. And I really liked them, and I liked what they did, but we had no clue how to monetize that. And this, even today, is still one of the biggest problems. It's very complicated, very difficult to monetize health tech.
René, he talked about slow movers and he pointed towards insurances, and you're a member of the board of a very big insurance company. Do you see that as a bottleneck? And if so, why? And if not, who do you think is kind of the bottleneck in the whole process?
Maybe first to react on Hans' statement. So I think we also recognize that insurance companies are slow. So what we're trying, and I think we will speak a little bit later about this, to also build new pillars. Yeah, so to build and separate the Unica Ventures company. And roughly 2 years ago, we also founded a new company who is really trying to take care about new services and products in the healthcare. But to come to your question, we do believe that one of the key bottlenecks is still the transformation which is ongoing. So from treating acute diseases to really prevention, to have a more holistic view on healthcare. I think this is the key topic ongoing, and this comes with a lot of complexity because it's about also the awareness of customers, it's about also different customer demands. It's also about a period where we will see quite huge additional expenses occurring because you will still have to take care about the acute diseases, but at the same time you need to invest in the prevention topic. And if you know today that I think around 80% of the healthcare expenses are dedicated to chronic diseases, these can be in many items solved through prevention, but just 3% of healthcare expenses run to prevention. So I think here's one of the key bottlenecks we're still seeing.
Stephanie, prevention, coming to OcoHealth, what do you think is the driver of the momentum currently? Give the audience a bit of an enlightenment what Oco is actually doing, and what do you think is the driver? And do you agree with the prevention mechanism of what's actually happening in healthcare?
Yeah, I definitely agree with prevention. I'll start with the excitement. I mean, why are we so excited about healthcare? And I think it's over the last 2 years with COVID become really personal to all of us who haven't. I mean, I live and breathe healthcare, you know, so it's all I know. So personally, I think, well, why would you invest in anything else? I can't understand it. But if we think about COVID having made healthcare so personal, we were testing ourselves, you know, all the time. And when we think we took preventative action, all of us as a population, so that we could stay healthy, we had to look after the health of others. We became aware about complex diseases and interactions. And going back to, again, why is there so much excitement about healthcare? It's because it's so expensive, and it's getting more expensive because diseases are becoming more complex, drugs are becoming more expensive, and there's only so much budget that we can afford to spend on healthcare. And so we've got to take innovative things to control those costs. And pharmaceutical companies aren't going to do that, and traditional ways of working aren't going to do that, and therefore we have to combine the need to deal with the complexity of healthcare together with us as individuals taking real priority and control, I think is probably the word, control over our health. And so we've got a few things coming together, not least the fact that we're really hyper aware of preventative health, that's making this such an exciting industry to be a part of. So at Oco we develop a technology so that people can home monitor their own vision. It's primarily for people who live with eye disease, who are frequent flyers at eye units and eye clinics. And so we're building a technology so that people who can have access basically to sight-saving eye treatment on time. So that we can get drugs when they're needed on time and reduce the costs of delivering eye care at scale. And so home monitoring for us is the way that we can control those costs.
Well, Jenny, Stephanie talked about control of the health, and I think that's a really good point to coming to April. Jenny raised an impressive round very recently for her business. How difficult was it to convince investors from actually investing in prevention companies and taking control of something very personal, such as reproduction or fertility?
Yeah, everyone who knows me knows that I hate the fundraising part of being a founder. I think most people do, and especially because it's like for us. We are in this like weird triangle of like, some consider as a femtech, some say like reproduction tech, we talked about it. So we're also HR tech in a way. So we're kind of in a niche area. And then we're talking about fertility, something that's super stigmatized, like most decision makers in VCs are male. And so kind of very often they don't feel or see the problem. So it was very hard to kind of like, and personally, the way I saw it or experienced it is that, you go to a VC, and of course, like everyone took the first meeting, but like then usually the partner said like, oh, talk to my female investment manager. It's probably good for her to listen to that. She'll probably know about it. And then of course, like usually like women get it, like mostly because they feel it more and they have the pressure more, especially in a certain age. And of course, it was very hard to build the case and then going to the IC or kind of to the partners. And it was like, probably the market is not there. It's probably not big enough. We don't see this happening in Europe. And so it was very tough. Long story now, but it wasn't easy. And I think it's never easy, especially when you're in this like, in a certain area and so it's less about for me like preventative health. We're also doing IVF support, which is kind of very reactive, so to say. But I think it's in general like healthcare. Yes, everyone I talked to was like most of the VCs I talked to said like, here we're focused on fintech or health tech, which is cool. But I think it's and we also talked about this. You had a chance to chat yesterday and talking about healthcare in general. I think VCs always want to have this like same playbook. There needs to be the same growth. Like you see the same growth in fintech. It's like woo, and then you talk about healthcare or health tech, and of course it takes so much more time. And you said it yourself. And it's just like I'm not sure if there needs to be a different playbook also for health tech as well. We just need to spend more time and kind of make different assumptions a little bit.
Well, I totally agree that the playbook you see in SaaS businesses, fintech, you can definitely not apply. And Hansi, you've been doing that for a long time. What do you think a playbook could look like for VC investing, actually? Like, just imagining a playbook you can write for healthcare investing. What would you do based on your experience and hearing stories such as Jenny's, which are, you're not the only one and not the last one, I'm afraid. What do you think could be a playbook?
I really don't know many VCs having a playbook for health tech. Because the typical playbook is VC investing, you see that hockey stick growth in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, and there's practically no health tech company able to produce that hockey stick. It's just not possible. So any investor, whether a VC or a business angel investing in health tech, has to think that it's going to be a very long journey. There's no 3, 4, 5 years exit under normal circumstances. There are always some lucky shots, but under normal circumstances, it takes really, really long time. And I think there's one other reason for that. I want to elaborate a little bit more on what you said about therapy. Our whole health system is based on therapy. It's not based on diagnosis or on prevention. But this is something which has to change and will change because therapy is very, very expensive. It's so easy for all of us to understand. If we become sick, we all want to have the best possible therapy, whether it's surgery or whether it's some drugs or whatever. But it would be much better not to become sick. And this is where health tech really plays the major role. It's either in prevention, for example, using variables and all these things so that you really know and see and becoming aware of what happens to your body if you eat healthy or not eat healthy, if you do exercise or not doing exercise, if you sleep well or not sleeping well, doing the sleep tracking. But the system is not based on that. It's based on therapy. And changing that huge system is what takes so much time. And also, again, I have to say that because I think that's the biggest barrier in health tech. It's so really difficult to monetize a business model.
And can I add in on that as well? Because there's something you touched on that I think is really important, you know, the way that we're always reactive. But also, there's this thing in healthcare, and we're so guilty. I say this as a clinician because I've got experience of first-hand eye care. And you know, we think that you can make a pathway for one individual patient and that same pathway will apply for all the patients. And so just in the same way we're reactive, there's been this assumption around healthcare that everybody follows the same journey. Mm-hmm. But the complexity is that no two patients are the same. And so what digital, I think, is going to allow the industry to do is to move from a place where we've got one pathway for everybody into actually individual medicine and individual personalized healthcare. I mean, that's and we can't do that without digital, because you've got to be able to predict what route is somebody going to take within the journey so that you can be proactive. And we can't do that without digital, can we? Exactly. Which is why it's so exciting.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm observing something here. 40% of the people on the panel have a smartwatch. I don't have one. You don't have one. You don't have one. Who in the audience has a smartwatch? Can you raise your hand, please? It's less than 40%, I guess. But what about the trends we're seeing? Is that something you actually observe, that, you know, we're going to go more and more into this personalized health using the wearables? Is that something you guys are seeing as a trend in health tech? Hansi, you told me about your, what is it called, the sleep score? No, was it health?
Sleep tracking.
Sleep tracking, that his smartwatch told him that he drank too much wine yesterday, basically.
Exactly. That's why I woke up with headache this morning. I would have known that even without looking at the sleep tracking. But I mean, it's everything about becoming aware. That means that, for example, a smartwatch is a basic instrument for health tech, and an iPhone or a smartphone. That's really the basic instrument. If you don't have that, if you don't track what you're doing, then health tech doesn't know what to do. You need all that information, and you need to become aware. And as I said, I mean, this morning I woke up with headache because I had too much wine yesterday during the dinner. And that was very clear. But I was made aware by my smartwatch when I was drinking just one glass of wine in the evening. I felt very well during the night, and I woke up very well. But looking at the sleep tracker, I realized that I was sleeping 10 to 15% worse than without that glass of wine. And that is making me aware of maybe it's not such a good idea to have one glass of wine every evening, or to have enough sleep, to sleep my 7 hours or whatever I need, or 6 or 8, whatever. That's very individual. And you see that in the sleep tracker. Because if you don't track it, you are not aware of it, and it's more difficult to change. If you see it and you're aware, you can change it.
René, you're doing something very exciting within your insurance, and I would like you to enlighten the audience on, you know, what's the next step for you guys, and how are you going to implement what data you can track from people, and how are you going to use it?
I will do it in a second. I just wanted to add one point. I fully agree that we also believe that thanks to digitization and health tech, treatments and diagnosis will become much more individual. But we also see a risk here because customers need to share data. And we see a certain risk here, and this is again then also linked to the topic of you have to have a long breeze and a long view on the business, because this data protection topic is sometimes in contradiction to getting more data and use more data on an individual level. You ask about our path forward. So we are an insurance company. We have the advantage in Austria that we are the largest health insurer in Austria with a market share of around 45%. We own the largest private hospital group by 100%. and we have a lot of networks. So we decided for ourselves we want to enter the health ecosystem. We also recognize that doing this with the existing insurance business is quite difficult because the insurance business is not so trustworthy. It's what we see when it comes to data sharing, for example. We have an issue here. So we took the decision 2 years ago to found a new company called Sanus. And with this company, we want to develop additional healthcare services independent from our existing insurance business. This is the step we have done so far. We acquired the one or other company as well in this area to get a starting position. Nevertheless, we are still in the phase of exploring new business models and have not found our clear path forward here.
Well, something I was surprised of hearing that, and there's no judgment, positive, negative, which is most of the companies who are doing what you guys did went through this open innovation approach of finding Oko or April or one of your startups to kind of collaborate with, and you decided to go a bit more the in-house route. Can you give us some rationale about why you went to the in-house route, and is there actually a plan to, work with Oko or April, because they're actually looking forward to actually work with you as well?
Yeah, I think we're trying to go both ways. So through our Unica Ventures company, we're having more the investment view and investing in health tech companies as well. With this Sanus company, we really have the ambition to be part of this health ecosystem. So we want in the end to be a provider of services. And that's the reason why we also now are launching a new brand under which we will be in the market for our services. Nevertheless, this does not mean that we do everything by our own. So we're still partnering, searching for corporations. We just want to be part of this ecosystem, and we want to be the provider of services. Yeah, but we have a lot of partners, and also in the startup scene here.
So it's not bad news for startups?
No, it's not.
Okay, that's good. So Jenny and Stephanie, you can still read out to Renee, I guess, whenever you're ready. Hansi, you want to add?
Can I make a comment on that? It's really interesting for me to see how Sanus is going to work, because it's trying to start a startup within a big corporate. I personally don't know any case where this was successful, so I really wish you good luck.
Thank you, yeah. Maybe, so we had a long discussion on this one. We believe in this principle of ambidexterity. So we see that founding or exploring new business fields within the insurance business is quite difficult, and therefore we decided to go the way to found a new company which goes beyond insurance, but is also established beside insurance. And we tried. So we will see in a couple of years if we are successful or not. Yeah.
Well, and as a first step, you bought one of my portfolio companies. That was a good step.
Good decision.
Well, there's no conflict of interest here, so I'm just... so one thing I wanted to ask you both female founders, I think you're going on a path which I'm also agreeing it's a very difficult path for a corporate like your size with the market share to adapt the mentality of a startup. What's the biggest issue you face by building your startups? And maybe that could be a very good hint towards Renee to actually take that on and saying what's the biggest thing? I know you have a deep tech component in your startup. What's the biggest challenge you would like to kind of also give Renee a bit of the advice on how to manage that within a big corporation?
Well, there's so many challenges, we could go on for days, but the one that I think might be most interesting and perhaps the most relevant to you is this healthy tension that exists within health tech companies about being regulated and yet being agile, So at Oko, we're constantly feeling every day this healthy tension between, okay, we've got a procedure we need to follow within our regulated setup. How can we make sure that procedure is as agile as possible, and really having healthy conversations about actually, no, I think that's too onerous. Can we really iterate? Can we really innovate within, a structure that's safe? Because patients should rightly expect that their technology is really safe. But yet we also need to adapt it, we need to change it. And I think ultimately that's why health tech, I think as well, at the moment is, taking a little bit of time to just find its place, because fundamentally we need companies that have got that right, whether they're from a big organization or whether a little small company making their own procedures. And it goes against the nature of us as founders, because as a founder, the reason that, one of the reasons you have your own company is that you're free of all the policies that your previous workplace held, and then suddenly you're the one implementing the policies, and you hate yourself for doing it. So good luck.
Jenny, what about you? What advice would you give to kind of what was the biggest challenge? And
yeah, I mean, luckily we're not a direct-to-consumer business, so we're not like facing this side of the regulatory requirements, like we're not a DIGA or anything, so this is like nice, I think. But for us, it's like we said like, okay, from day one we want to become a pan-European provider, because what we see is that most companies that we talk to have employees like all over the place, like, and not just in one country. And then what we see is like when you want to offer a service in all the countries, it's just like, what is going on in Europe? Like who is coming up with all these like rules and laws? You know, it's like just some examples, like very specifically for my case, it's just like, you know, egg freezing is still not allowed in Austria. What the fuck? I mean, like, who came up with this rule? And at the same time, then egg donation is allowed here, but then egg donation is not allowed in Germany. And so it's like, okay, surrogacy is allowed in the UK, but then almost nowhere else. And it's like all these rules, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. It's just like someone came up with this like a very long time ago, probably a white old man, and nothing ever changed since then. And I think this is like as if we want to grow like from a European standpoint and we want to become stronger as an ecosystem, I think we also need to be like more aligned on how we do like our regulations and laws in that space.
Well, we heard 2 times regulation, I think. Hansi, regulation?
No, I wanted to add something to what is important in a startup. I mean, the main motivation of startup founders is they want to be entrepreneurs and they want to become successful. And if they are not successful, they fail as entrepreneurs. They might try it again or not, but that's the basic motivation. And I cannot see that motivation in a corporate company, because if they fail and if they are not successful, they probably will have another job in the corporate. And that makes a big difference, and I think this is something which you should address.
Well, they have a buy-in from the board because you're basically pushing for it, I think.
Exactly. So, but I think all the difficulties you're addressing are fully right, fully properly. We're discussing this also very often. I think what is driving us currently is, of course, a high attention by the board. Yeah. So I think we are meeting now on a monthly basis the management team of Sanox. So there's a high attention, and it's now ongoing for 2 years. So I think there is sufficient pressure also to be successful, but I can fully agree that there is a difference if you have this inner motivation. Obviously, you have more this inner motivation which is built up in a corporate organization. Just want to add one thought why we do think it's an interesting experiment, because what we learned also in the last 2 years, we started Sanox quite beside Unica with not having any link. In the last 2 years, we saw that, of course, Unica is having a lot of assets which we can use and which are helpful for the corporate startup. It can be our sales network in Austria with 1,500 colleagues who are selling insurance products currently, but could be also selling maybe HealthTech products or healthcare services. Yeah, so I think there are several assets we can also build on, and I think that's the interesting part on this corporate startup idea.
But what investment decision criteria are you going to use to push a project forward? Are they going to be the same for the whole kind of insurance group you have? Are they going to be different? Because you need different decision-making criteria for startup, because as Hansi said, there's a chance of failure for that.
Yeah, no, 100% sure. So I think we have to differentiate here. So when we go through Unica Ventures, we have quite traditional financial KPIs in terms of minimum revenue, minimum gross margins we want to achieve, and how fast we have a payback period of customer acquisition costs. So that's very traditional. And also having here a look on the soft skills of the founders, and are they able also to attract talent and to scale up the business. That's on the pure venture side. On the Sanox side, it's more that we ourselves try to explore our new business models and business fields. And whenever we see here interesting cooperations and partnerships, we go for the sake of building up a long-term sustainable business model. Yeah, and here we don't have a separate playbook or a specified playbook. Yeah.
I mean, one player who's pushing for the health tech industry to kind of prosper is also VC, and I can say for ourselves basically we actually have a playbook to invest in healthcare, and the first question I asked the founders, like, are you actually health tech or are you lifestyle? Okay, and this is the first question for me, to divide them into 2 groups, because it's unfair to treat a lifestyle company with a set of questions which are addressed to actually a health tech company, which are more in the area of IP, certification. Time is different. Whereas the lifestyle healthcare company, I need to ask about performance marketing and all of the other stuff they need to bring on the market. So you both raised, Stephanie and Jenny, and I have this question like, what advice do you have actually on VCs on how to improve healthcare investments? And you can be as bold, and I'm sure there are some VCs in the audience here and also online. Yeah, go for it. I'm going to write it down in my mind and then share it with my colleagues as well, obviously.
Well, the first one you don't need to write down, because I think it was the reason why when we had our first conversation, I was pretty sure that we could continue to have good conversations because you're a scientist by training and I'm a scientist by training, and so we had a different language that we could use. You were interested in, what are you really building here? Is this unique? Is this valuable? And how are you going to get it to your first patient? And that I think is like really critical, because we were very much in the health rather than the lifestyle space. But I think you knew that what we had to have was really high quality data to be really good within, especially within eye care, because if we're going to give everybody excellent eye care, for me, like 80% probably isn't good enough. We want people to see really well for the whole of their lives. And ophthalmology is an industry which is, real precision data. And so that's the first thing I think that I would say to VCs, that you need to make sure that there's a scientist on the team who, regardless of what area of science they're in, they can use those skills to interrogate the data that company is planning on producing, and making sure that that's going to be of a high enough quality if that's relevant to the medical discipline. And the second thing I would advise as well, and I don't know if you ever asked me this, but I would advise for all the VCs to make sure that they ask the startups and the founder, particularly the founders, is how many years have you worked with patients? If they're developing something directly or indirectly for patients, is there actual deep patient expertise or within the medical area? Because I have 10 years experience with real patients, and I think, in that first 5 years, I thought I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I'm still learning. I don't see patients so much anymore, but, I think that's really, really important, because you're using that deep expertise to foresee the problems, but also the background of that subspecialty. For example, me in eye care and ophthalmology, I know what's happened for the last 15 years in ophthalmology, and so I can see what trends there are. A lot of what we're seeing, I can only speak for the UK, is that there's a lot of very young, junior doctors coming out who've, even some of them are having funded VC-backed startups while they're still in medical school, so actually they're learning from the textbooks. Yes, they've met a few patients, but is that deep expertise there? So there's no Forbes 30 under 30 for me, but I think that actually that, you wouldn't know. But that, I think, has a real advantage in healthcare specifically.
Jenny, any advice on VCs?
Nothing to add. Like, really nice.
Hansi, you did that for a long time. What do you do differently compared to 10 years ago? Because we also need to evolve as people who actually invest. So
that has a lot to do with the question you asked the two ladies. I mean, I'm a business angel, and it's easier for me because I invest early stage. For me, 90% of the criteria is the personality of the founders, of the founding team, and the capabilities I can see, and the mindset I can see. And then they have to act in a market big enough, and the first business idea has to be innovative, if not disruptive. And then I invest. Series A, Series B is much more difficult. Series A probably is the most difficult one in health tech. For me, in health tech, I don't mind whether it takes 5 years or 8 years or 10 years, because I want to be part of the journey, and I love to be part of the journey. By the way, I would have invested in both of you ladies early stage. A little bit too late for me now, I think.
Well, we have 2 minutes left, and I told you I'm going to have a surprise question, which I didn't brief anyone on you on, which is, give me 3 keywords why people should come and speak to you, because you're going to be around and it's a networking event. So I'm going to give you a bit of time and I'm going to say my 3 keywords, and then you can kind of think about so why should you come and meet these guys and speak to these guys? I do it for myself. Obviously, VC is something you should come and speak to me. Secondly, I think is healthcare. And thirdly, football. Okay, so this is the 3-1. Stephanie?
Ophthalmology, because it's a market that people don't realize how big it is. The second thing is Series A. I'm interested to learn from other people who are ahead. And the third one is, on your theme, food, because I'm excited to learn what more food Vienna has to offer.
Jenny?
Nice. Yeah, obviously fertility/infertility, because I'm an expert now for various reasons. Second one, probably also fundraising/angel investments. I think I've seen the last 6 months, I've seen a lot, and I talked to many people. And third one, surfing, because I'm not super good, but I love it.
Hansi?
Diversity/female founders, fun and win.
Fun and what?
Win.
Oh, winning.
Win.
Yeah.
It's about winning at the end of the day, always.
Ready, no pressure, 17 seconds I'm seeing.
I would choose corporate startup as one word, if it's allowed. Exchange here on opinions. Second one is talent attraction. And the third one is sports.
Define sports quickly, 4 seconds. What's
Fitness and swimming.
Fitness and swimming. Thank you very much for listening.